For my research project, I chose to review an article from the American Journal of Epidemiology titled Ovarian Cancer Risk Factors in African American and White Women. The reason why I was drawn to this article was because of my mother's history with ovarian cancer. She was diagnosed with this deadly disease in its early stages and thankfully was able to overcome it with the help of chemotherapy and a total hysterectomy. I'll give just a brief overview of the disease before discussing the findings of this article. Ovarian cancer is the fifth deadliest cancer for women, which accounts for more deaths than any other cancer of the reproductive system. A woman's risk of getting ovarian cancer is about 1 in 75 chances, and the general prognosis for this disease usually depends on the stage in which the cancer has spread. There are 4 stages of ovarian cancer, with the first being contained to the ovaries, to the 4th stage where the cells have spread to tissues outside of the abdomen and can be found in other organs. Being that my mother had stage 1C ovarian cancer, she had a pretty good prognosis. I'm very fortunate that my mother caught it early on before the disease was able to advance. Not only does this disease afflict women of Asian descent, but it also afflicts African American women and white women. This leads me to introduce the article in which I researched. The prevalence of many ovarian cancer risk factors differ significantly between African American and white women. However, there has been little research on the relative importance of these risk factors among African American women as compared to white women. Because most epidemiologic studies have enrolled very few African American women, there is little information on the importance of these risk factors as compared with white women. This can account for lower incidence among African Americans. The research in this article sets out to investigate how the relative contributions of risk factors may vary between racial or ethnic groups. In order to study this, data from the North Carolina Ovarian Cancer Study was used to compare risk factors for ovarian cancer among African American and white women. Calculations of population attributable risk factors were also done. The North Carolina Ovarian Cancer Study was a case-control study of epithelial ovarian cancer. A total of 1,114 cases were enrolled, 84.6% of whom were white, 12.8% of whom were African American, and 2.5% of whom were of other races or ethnicities. Nurse interviewers conducted in-person visits where informed consent was obtained. A 90-minute questionnaire was administered, blood samples were taken, and anthropometric measurements were performed. Chi-squared analysis were used to compare clinical and histological characteristics of cases between African American and whites. The researchers' analysis of ovarian cancer risk factors between African American and white women shows similar relations for several characteristics. Some of these include the inverse associations with parity, oral contraceptive use, and tubal ligation. The proportions of cases that were invasive were similar for both races. However, the most histological differences were that tumors in African Americans were less likely to be clear cell and more likely to be of histologic type other than serous, endometrioid, and mucinous. Also, African American women were more likely to be diagnosed with higher stage disease and somewhat less likely to have poorer differentiated tumors. History of infertility or endometriosis was also associated with significantly increased risk for white women, but not for African American women. Family history of breast or ovarian cancer were associated with increased risk in both racial groups, with a stronger association among African Americans. Later age menarche and history of breastfeeding were associated with reduced risk in white women, whereas no association was observed from African Americans. The attributive fractions for not having a tubal ligation, high BMI, and no oral contraceptive use were considerably higher for African Americans than for whites. This reflected the stronger associations and higher prevalence of these factors among African Americans. Some of the limitations of the research include the relatively small sample of African American women, even though the use of the North Carolina ovarian cancer study included more African American women than any other study of the ovarian cancer, and the possibility of bias being introduced due to non-participation of ovarian cancer cases and controls. The article is a very interesting read, and it was clearly written. The data suggests that further research is needed on etiological factors etiologic factors than ovarian cancer in African American women. Even though this article did not address women of Asian descent, the topic is near and dear to my heart. As with all cancers, early detection is extremely important. Regular exams and screening tests can help to lower the mortality rate if women catch this disease early.